to the Dev Morning Show at Night. My name is Cassidy Williams, and I'm so excited to be back here with you today. And as always, I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Zach. Hey, Zach.
Hey, Cass.
We have a super awesome guest today. I'm very excited to have Anjana Vakil on the show today. She is a software engineer and educator. Anjana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Anjana, what are you working on right now?
Yeah, well, I am at the moment working freelance as a consultant and contractor in the developer relations space. So mostly working on content and content strategies. So things like helping out startups kind of figure out content that will help people understand how to use their tools, sample apps, blog posts, videos, things like that. But to be honest, what I've been mostly working on this year, so I quit my full-time job about, 5-6 months ago. And what I've been mostly working on is trying to work on like myself and mental health, recover from burnout, develop a healthier relationship to my work and, not have that be so intricately tied up in my sense of self-worth and derive sense of value and worth from other things. So I've mostly been working on, I would say, tangential problems to the developer space. Yeah.
Those are probably the most important problems, though, to solve, because it is something that I think in the tech industry in general, we're kind of encouraged to intertwine ourselves with our work, for better or for worse. So. Usually for worse, honestly. And so working on that, I think, is so important and honestly probably worth lots of podcasts and conference talks too.
Yeah. And it's also way harder than writing software, let me tell you, or than writing, blog posts or tutorials or workshops about software, or conference talks. So yeah, I don't know. It's been a challenge, sort of trying to figure out a new way of thinking about that for me personally, because I think I've, I, like many people, I think during the last few years, especially during the lockdown times, really kind of set myself on a bullet train for burnout town. And so, now trying to figure out like a more sustainable way to be working and still kind of protecting the that like inner core, that little flame of creativity and curiosity that I think is so important to be able to like continuously do really good work over the long term, but it's so easy to neglect in the short term and let just sort of sputter out. So yeah, some of the stuff that's been on my mind recently.
That's awesome though. Have you been liking freelancing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess I've never been a person who's great at routine or at things kind of staying the same. Like I've changed careers several times. I've changed continents and countries several times. And I think I like having a lot of variety in my style of working. So some weeks will be really intense. Some will be more relaxed. I can, work. I love traveling, so I can kind of work my travels into my game plan and not just have to kind of relegate it to a couple weeks of vacation, that sort of thing. So it's been working out for me so far. So I've been enjoying just sort of experimenting with it. But I'm pretty new to living life that way, I guess. So still figuring out a lot of the dotting I's and crossing T's and the legalities and insurance and all that fun stuff.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's a whole other.
It's a whole other thing. Yeah, exactly. Also something I've been working on, I guess.
And now it's time for an awesome ad read by our awesome sponsors, Launch Darkly. The Dev Morning Show at Night is a sponsored podcast. It means someone has to pay the bills around here. We're sponsored by Launch Darkly, and Launch Darkly is the first scalable feature management platform. That means dev teams can innovate and get better software to customers faster. How? By gradually releasing new software features and shipping code whenever they want, fast-tracking their journeys to the cloud, and building stronger relationships with business teams. Thanks for the money, Launch Darkly.
Anjana, what does your day-to-day look like? Especially because it sounds like there's so much variety in it.
Yeah, exactly. It's really hard to say. Any particular day is not necessarily a typical day, but it'll be anything from, sometimes now that in-person events have kind of been starting up again, sometimes we'll be at a conference all day, or sometimes I will be working on, a sample app for a client. And so coding all day, or coding and collaborating with maybe somebody on their team. Or some days I will just be writing, or some days I will just be researching, and other days I won't actually have anything crucial to do, so I'll be, I don't know, driving around the Pacific Northwest, let's say, camping. So it's really kind of it's a very chaotic and kind of meandering day to day, I would say, week to week. It's really never the same, never a dull moment, I suppose. But like I said, I've been trying to also kind of pace myself. So what I've been trying to do is also take a little bit more time to just kind of, spend quiet time and not be, let's say, on, as I think those of us who are in the DevRel space and spend a lot of time at events and conferences and talking to people, it can be really fun, but it can also be really intense. And I think, although I would say that I am an extrovert, I think the pandemic time seriously reduced my extrovert abilities. And so now I've been also trying to find more time to just do kind of quiet things, be at home, and maybe, read or research or things like that. So a little bit of everything, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and as someone who's not an extrovert, but more of like an outgoing introvert, same. And so being able to find those times in your day where you can just not be like, hi, I'm a presenter and here's this API, where you can just kind of be chill and quiet and do your thing is very important.
Yeah. And like I said, I've been trying to also kind of, I think tend towards overwork just naturally. So I've also been trying to fight that. And so I've been trying to also, tell myself that I don't need to be like pushing more, doing more projects, finding more work to do, that sort of thing all the time. So for example, this month, end of the year, it's like this time of year where there's a lot happening. I'm trying to actively do less.
Which is so important, because there is that guilt voice where it's just like, you could be coding right now. You could be doing something right now. You gotta push against it.
Well, when you are doing your coding or writing or anything like that in your day-to-day, what kind of tools are you using?
Well, I guess I mostly the last few years have been coding in JavaScript. So doing a lot of React and Next kind of apps. So sort of using that stack, if we are calling it that. If I feel like that word is sort of outdated now, I don't know. Anyway, and if we're meaning like tools in terms of IDEs and things like that, I'm not, and maybe this is why I'm not a real programmer, but I don't have extremely strong opinions about the editors that I use. So,
that's okay. I think most real programmers don't.
Exactly. I love a former coworker of mine, Eli Fitch, used to have a site that was like, are you a real programmer? Go to this site to find out. And you go there and it's like, yes, hell yes, definitely, absolutely. So exactly. I love how Anywho, so I guess I use I don't know, the pretty standard VS Code at this point in time, and I spend a lot of time in Zoom calls and Google Meets and various other video conferencing platforms, doing conference talks or streams on Twitch, that sort of thing. So a little bit of a lot of things, I guess, and I think perhaps one of the tools that I've been using more recently is a good old-fashioned paper notebook to take notes on things.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's been exciting.
Nice.
My handwriting has definitely not gotten better through decades of unused.
Don't get me started.
But does that count? Do pens and paper count?
Yeah. That's probably like the
counts.
first physical tool that someone has brought up in these podcasts.
And I think those physical tools are so important. Like they say that you actually learn information better if you handwrite it rather than you type it and stuff. And so I've also been trying to use those more, and just like one of those little field notebooks and everything. And as I look at it, I'm like, I'm pretty sure my handwriting is at a second grader's level. I haven't touched a pen in a very long time.
I remember all those. I remember being in kindergarten and we had to like drill, the letters and things.
The letter
like
E,
work on our penmanship, and it's like, wow, that really all. I need that
Went
now.
out
I
the
need to like,
window.
go back to the big letters with the little dotted lines.
Yeah, practice your J's and all that.
What is that called? Penmanship?
Penmanship,
for
exactly.
Adults 101. That needs to be a course now.
Honestly, I'd take that. I feel like it's necessary.
Yeah, I have some friends that are into calligraphy. I feel like that's like
penmanship
to the extreme.
That's the next level, though.
Now we're just doing art. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's beautiful and a whole other thing.
Yeah. So those are some of the tools I guess I've been using, but I think mostly I've been using like talking to people, my mouth.
That's a whole tool in itself.
And ear tools, I guess.
Yeah. Also, you're mentioning IDEs made me realize today, as of the day of this recording, Adam, the editor, is officially sunsetted today.
That's
Good
so
night,
sad.
Sweet Prince.
Wow.
I know.
Oh, I used Adam for a long time. I actually only
Same.
relatively recently switched to VS Code. I was like,
I'm
going
holding
down
on.
with the ship. But I liked Adam. I mean, it had some
it
issues,
was
but
great for its time, but
I had a great time with Adam.
It happens. Good night, Adam. You'll be missed.
Kept in
Speaking
our hearts.
of things that have been in the industry in a while, what got you in the industry in the first place?
Well, I guess as perhaps is a theme that is emerging, a meandering series of happenstance coincidences, I guess, is what got me into software. I used to teach English as a foreign language. I always really loved foreign languages and linguistics. And so for a while I was teaching English as a foreign language, and I got really interested in linguistics, so the scientific study of language, and applied linguistics to help people become more effective teachers or learners of languages. And I found out about the world of computer-assisted language learning or computer-assisted language teaching tools, so sort of like ed tech for the language learning world. And I got really interested in that, and I found out about this field called computational linguistics, which is this big umbrella term that refers to a lot of things, but essentially anything at the intersection of computers and human languages. So it could be using computers to scientifically study how language works and all different things about languages that one might want to study and sort of in an academic context using computational methods, or it could be doing things like applying that science to language technology and applying, things like machine learning to build natural language processing systems or speech recognition systems or speech synthesis systems, or using different tools to help. For example, I was interested in providing feedback to language learners so that they can get a little extra help, and that teachers can have a little extra help in like giving people personalized, let's say, pronunciation training, feedback, that sort of thing. And so I went back to school and I did a master's degree in computational linguistics. And through that, I really had to be writing a lot of code for the research that I was trying to carry out and for various projects in my work there. And I found that I really loved writing the code to build the thing that I needed for my research more than I actually liked doing the research and writing the papers and things like that. So, so anyway, I got really interested in software development, and I decided after finishing my master's to try to get a foot in the door in the industry. And so I found out about this amazing place called the Recurse Center, which if folks haven't heard about it, go check out recurse.com. It's amazing. It's a programming community, I would say. But it used to be kind of based in New York City, and now it's virtual mostly. That runs what they call a programming retreat, like a writer's retreat, but for coders. And so it's essentially a dedicated amount of time. It used to be 3 months when I went. Now I think you can do it for 6 weeks too, where you go and you work on learning more about whatever you're interested in the wide world of programming and computer science. So people work on all kinds of different stuff, and it's all self-directed. There are no classes, there's no teachers, no professors, no curriculum, but it's this really supportive environment and community of people who are just super excited about learning new things, sharing their learning, helping each other learn. So lots of pairing, lots of kind of knowledge sharing, mini talks or workshops or things like that. And so I would say the combination of that grad degree in computational linguistics and then going to the Recurse Center after that is really how I kind of started to get a tiny little foot in the door of the industry. And then professionally, my professional foot in the door was through the Outreachy internship program, which is another amazing thing. If folks haven't heard of it, outreachy.org. This is an open source internship program where they offer paid remote internships for 3 months to people who are traditionally underrepresented or marginalized in the industry. And so it's really cool because you get to work with a mentor on a huge open source project. Like I interned at Mozilla, so working on some of the platform stuff for testing Gecko, the browser engine behind Firefox. And there's all kinds of different projects, and they're not even all coding related. Some of them are documentation or user research or all kinds of different stuff. So it's really cool. And that was my first kind of full-time job or internship in the industry. And from there, I guess I started doing a lot of conference speaking and ended up through that internship and through a variety of conferences, kind of getting my first job or two in the industry. And so that's my origin story, I suppose.
Yeah, that is awesome. I feel like every really good developer I know has touched the Recurse Center at some point. It's such a cool program, and I've always just been so impressed with how they're able to churn out such cool creativity and deep knowledge in certain subjects, and the fact that you did that and Outreachy, which is also such a well-regarded program, that's so awesome that is what propelled you into the industry, because that's such cool opportunities.
Yeah, I was really lucky. I feel so lucky to have kind of randomly discovered the Recurse Center. Well, back then it was called Hacker School, but on some 3 a.m. internet rabbit hole that I was down, just like finding out about this thing. And then once I was there, it was the community at the Recurse Center that told me about Outreachy. Some people had participated in it before. Some people, actually the person who ended up being my mentor at Mozilla was also a Recurse Center participant. So, just the doors that being part of that community opened for me and for so many people that have been, I consider myself very lucky to have been able to be part of that community. It's just really phenomenal. So yeah, definitely anybody who's, kind of curious or maybe looking to spend some time like expanding their horizons, or in my case, I was trying to fill in some gaps because I don't have a traditional computer science background. So fill in some of the gaps in my understanding of some of the layers of the computing world that I didn't understand yet, that sort of thing. Or a lot of people go to learn a new technology, a new language, or try something different than what they've been working in. It's a really phenomenal place to do that, and a really phenomenal community that just exposes you to so many different new ideas, technologies, opportunities, jobs. They also have job placement services. So that's what's really awesome about it. And yeah, cannot recommend more highly both of those programs, Recurse Center and Outreachy.
Oh, I love that.
Well, it is now time for our rapid fire questions. We are going to ask you questions rapidly. Okay. So we all have domain names or project ideas that we're squatting on. What are some of yours?
So I'm actually not too much of a domain squatter.
Good for you.
But I recently discovered that .rocks is a TLD, a top-level domain. So that's really tempting. So I think I registered something like devrel.rocks or something like that, which I thought could be, I don't know. I haven't done zero work or even real thinking about this, but I thought it could be a nice place for folks to find out more about what DevRel is and see if, opportunities in working in developer relations might be of interest to them, because I think it's something that a lot of folks, have maybe heard of, but don't really know what it is. And so that's one thought. We'll see.
And hey, getting the domain name is the first step to everything. So
that's the biggest step.
The first and longest step.
Yeah.
Sits there for 6 years.
All right. What is the most recent thing you over-optimized?
The most recent thing I over-optimized? Probably I think a sample app that I was working on for a client that it was really just a toy app to kind of illustrate certain directory structures and things like that. It wasn't necessarily meant to be anything that people would use, and it definitely wasn't meant to be anything that people would use and like care about the performance of, because it was really just an example. But nevertheless, made some performance optimizations that really, not crucial to the purposes of that particular piece of toy software, but sometimes.
It's so satisfying when you do have that, though, and you're just like, oh yeah, it doesn't matter, but yes, it has hardware acceleration.
But now it's faster, and it doesn't matter, faster.
Look at that lighthouse score. What is your golden rule for coding or working in general?
I guess my golden rule I try to keep in mind is, I guess you could say empathy or something like that. Like thinking about, okay, who's going to be, if I'm writing this code right here, who's going to be reading it? Is it going to be me in 3 months or 3 hours and I have no idea what I was doing and I need to make it very clear to myself? Is it going to be somebody who's never seen any of this code base before and is just sort of like landing on this piece of code, and like, do they need to be able to understand what it's happening? Like, what's going on with that? What are they trying to do with it? Is this going to be something that, does the person who's going to be using this code, am I thinking through like what they care about? Does it matter if it's performant? Does it matter if it's, not repetitive, or if it's reusing, or if it's using a different pattern than something else in the code base? Like, is that going to be confusing to somebody new who's coming into the team and trying to get on board? So I guess just like trying to put myself in other people's shoes, or future me's shoes sometimes, and have empathy for what that experience is going to be like. And of course, for the users also, whether they're developers or not, trying to have empathy for what that is going to feel like when you're going through this thing, because it's more important what experience people have after I write this code than really the experience that I have while writing it. So I can feel as good as I want about whatever code I wrote, but if it makes somebody else feel bad, that's no good.
Yeah. And if it's not legible or something, that's
exactly,
so real.
If it has, variable names only I could possibly understand, and again, that's just present me. Who knows what's going to be retained in the old noggin down the line.
The whole future me concept is very real, because there are times where you're just like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
No. You got to deal with that.
Who wrote that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. All right. What's your favorite "it depends" question?
I think I used to get asked a lot, what programming language should I learn? Or should I learn, what programming paradigm should I learn? Should I learn functional programming, or should I do OOP, or, should I learn Python or JavaScript or Rust or whatever it is? And I really think there is not a solid universal answer to that question. I think it's always dependent on what you're trying to do, what you're interested in doing, what you maybe already know and want to leverage, or maybe what you already know and want to try something different and expand your mental map of programming, that sort of thing. So I always find that question hard to answer.
Yeah, it's so real.
There's
just so many. It leads you to asking more questions than actually answering the question itself.
Maybe we need like a BuzzFeed style like quiz or something, and match you with your perfect programming language.
What is the oldest piece of tech you still own?
Ooh, so how about a little show and tell, shall we?
Yes. I love show and
tell. Phones.
Yes.
I realized I don't know if I just don't throw out my old phones. I always feel guilty and overwhelmed trying to figure out how to recycle them properly, whatever. And so I just put them in a drawer and then forget about them until it's time to move. And then I move and I'm like, oh no, I have this drawer full of phones. I guess it's coming with me. So, so I have all of these old phones, including, check this little guy out. This is flip phone.
Oh my word.
That still works, by the way. From, I don't know, it must have been like 20 sometime like 2010 to 2012-ish, I would
Wow.
say. But like this thing there's apps on here. I had forgotten that this was a thing, but before smartphones, you'd have like little email apps, and there's even Twitter on this thing, which I think is just hilarious. So that's fun. And Reaker stickers, of course. Yeah. But that's not even the oldest phone I own. So fun little pandemic project I did early lockdown era. I built a landline see-through.
Oh my word. Yes.
Phone that I went on eBay and bought from the 90s, a like DIY build your own phone kit that was marketed to children in the 90s, and like the kids on the box had the whole, the mushroom cut and the like brightly striped sweaters and everything. And this is like, it's like see-through, and you had to assemble. They give you all the little keys for the pad and everything, and the different components for the speaker and microphone and everything. And so that was a fun little pandemic project. And I actually did have this hooked up to a landline for about 5 minutes, but no longer. Now it's just a paperweight.
Incredible.
So yeah, 90s landline phone, I think, is probably the oldest piece of tech I have.
Well, and those kinds of phones too, like you said, they still work. They last. I feel like now we're in this time. This is turning into a rant. This time of like planned deprecation, where like your phone is probably gonna last 2 years, 3 years, but then after the 5-year mark, it's not going to be supported anymore or anything like that. But then you pull out a phone from 2010, from the 90s, and it'll work just fine.
Yeah, this thing started right up. It's amazing.
It should be. And the battery lasts like a month.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm sort of on the other side of the spectrum of I don't get new phones or computers often. I try and like if it's still working, even if it's a little slow or what have you, it's still working. So literally until today, my personal laptop for the last 10 years has been a 2012 MacBook Air that is still honestly going pretty strong. It's just starting to, it's not can't really chug along up all of the hills that we ask it to in the modern era, but honestly, perfectly reasonable and decent laptop that they made to last 10 years ago. So
yes,
I wish that all devices were still made that way. That would be nice.
Agreed. That's honestly how I got into mechanical keyboards so much, because they last. You can use a mechanical keyboard from the 80s and it'll work just fine.
Nice. So what's the oldest keyboard you have?
Well, unfortunately, I have spent too much money. I've built a lot of my keyboards. And so I think a lot of them, like the one that is like the oldest, but it because it uses old tech, but I definitely have like the modern twist on it. I think it was originally built and designed that way in like 95 or something, 1995. But I have like all the modern connectors and everything, so it feels like cheating.
Yeah, still.
But it works.
We'll allow it. We'll allow it.
Yeah. It gets the job done.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Have you written a piece of cringy code? And if so, what was the last piece of cringy code you wrote?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'm sure most of the code I write can be cringed at by someone in some circumstance. I definitely have written code that I would go back and kind of cringe at. Like, it's not recent, but I remember when I was at the Recurse Center, I was learning JavaScript for the first time, and I wrote just a little Game of Life implementation. So the Game of Life is this sort of cellular automata game, I guess is a word you could use for it. It's sort of a way that you have little cells or pixels that are either black or white, and they kind of evolve over generations they look like they're moving themselves according to these rules, whatever. Anyway, Conway's Game of Life, y'all can look it up. The way that I implemented this, not knowing any better at the time, was I had it adjustable so you could change the size of the board. And I was creating individual, like, I don't know if they were divs or whatever, DOM nodes for every single little cell in this thing. So I was touching them on every iteration of this game to update them. So you can imagine what happened as you increase the size. It would just like grind to a halt, basically. And so, now I know better. And I would probably, like thinking about that, I'm like, yeah, that wasn't the best. But I guess, part of, like I said, I'm really trying to work on kind of better relationships with, I don't know, myself and my work and that sort of thing. So I'm trying not to feel so cringy about it. And I'm trying to feel more like, I made something happen with the tools that were available to me at the time, the skills and the knowledge that I had.
Yeah.
And now I've learned more. So good for me, So I'm trying to be a little bit less cringy and a little bit more, I don't know,
it's a growth
empathetic
moment.
to my past self, that she was doing a good job with what she had at the time. So
Did her best.
she did her best.
There was a phrase that I saw recently, and I'm going to botch it, but it was something like, the stuff that you do today is a before, and there's going to be an after at some point. And if you keep thinking of your work that way, it's kind of like you will improve. And someday you're going to be at like that after point, and you'll be like, oh, do you remember that before? Do you remember that old piece of code I wrote, or that thing that I drew, or my handwriting at that point? And that's how you progress. And it's good to think of it that way when you're struggling with something or trying something new and get frustrated with it or something.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's really important to have that kind of like compassion especially for yourself, especially as you're learning, because, and I think that's something that we I don't know, I see a lot of folks that are kind of at senior or higher level sort of get, I don't know, more and more, what's the word, resistant maybe to like looking like they don't know something, or they don't know the answer to something, or they got called out, or got caught out and said something that was wrong, and what have you, because I feel like we build up this idea that like we have to be these infallible beacons of rightness. I don't know. And it's not true, like we all make mistakes all the time. We all the entire industry does things that are super questionable, where we're like all putting our heads together and decide this is a good idea. And, then decades later, we're like, well, that was unfortunate.
Should we have done that?
But we're all trying, at least I hope we're trying to do our best with what we have. And I think it's really good if we can be just more compassionate to ourselves and to each other, that, if something isn't optimal, that's just like room for growth and room for learning, and not necessarily shame.
Yes.
So
love not feeling shame.
It's a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, true. What is your favorite programming pun?
This is a hard one. I love puns.
So
and, I feel like puns are just, it's a way of life, really. I was trying to think of a good one. So I like functional programming. So how about, what is a functional programmer's favorite meal?
What?
Curry. Currying is a functional programming concept. Anyway, Haskell curry is like anyway.
Yeah,
anywho,
that's a good one.
yeah.
That's a good one.
I like that.
Or you could do like, what's the best thing about breaking up with a functional programmer?
What?
Getting closure.
I
so
love
sorry.
it.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's good. Here, I don't know if you know this one. What's a functional programmer's favorite animal?
Ooh. What?
A lamb. Duh.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, amazing. I'm going to have to steal that one.
Take it.
Love it.
Nice. And then to round this all out, what is your most used emoji?
Ooh, probably some kind of tie between the upside down face, because I feel like I'm just
it's a great one.
Relatable.
It really captures my mental state a lot of the time, and the like raised hands that I use as like a high five kind of thing. The two hands with little.
There's like a celebrate or something like that.
Yeah, I don't really know what that's like supposed to be, but I use it as like high five. So
yeah,
probably
that's a good one.
And then I also use the smiling face with tear a lot.
The new ones are pretty good. The smiling face with tear and like the melty face.
Oh, the melty face is good.
Yeah.
I actually need to, up that in the rotation more. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Definitely some good job. Unicode standards people.
Yeah.
I don't.
All right, it is time for the random segment generator. We're going to ask you some random things, and the first random segment is Talkin' Ship. What is something that is overrated or underrated in the tech community, in your opinion?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have?
I know, right? It's spicy one.
I think something that is super overrated in the tech and like computing world is, I don't know how to phrase this, but I guess like heroes or people just sort of solo hero balling and like doing the thing all by themselves. Like somebody, I don't know, I've seen this so many times. We've all had, some colleague we'll be debating how to solve a problem or something. And then somebody will just like go home over the weekend, write a whole new solution that's like totally different and come in on Monday and plunk it down. And now the whole team sort of has to get on board, that kind of thing. Or we have so much, there's a lot of hero worship in the industry, right? Around these big names and these
source
big, yeah, definitely. And there's sort of this, even historically, right? Like these big name computer scientists that sort of we see as being the kind of be all end all. And I don't know. I think that we really need to acknowledge that I think of software as kind of an extension of language. Like it's a way for us to communicate with each other. I think there's a great, I want to say it's in SICP or some book like that, like Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs. There's a quote like that programs are only incidentally meant for computers to run. They're primarily meant for humans to read and kind of reason about. So the idea that coding is really a social and collaborative task, and like computing is really just an extension of our kind of interrelation as human beings and how we collaborate in a complex society, I think is something that's not appreciated enough in the tech world. And so I think like all of our interdependencies, our interrelationships, our for example, the willingness to ask for help or say you don't know something or say that, you could use a hand, that sort of thing is something I think we could all be doing a lot better, a lot more. And I think in order to do that, we're going to have to give up some of our hero worship if we want to go down a more sustainable and collaborative and I think like better path in terms of innovation and progress as a community as a whole. So yeah.
And especially since you brought up that
100%.
Yeah. When you brought up the whole thing about seniors, trying to look like, they know everything and, they don't want to like slip up or anything. I think it's so important to have that for them to, show that you're like, okay, I'm not this hero, like work with other junior devs, show that like, oh, it's okay, even though I'm at this level, I still need help all the time and, it's okay to slip up and the whole growth thing, just good to show.
Yeah, exactly. And I was talking about this to someone else recently too, but the notion of being, I think like a self-made developer or self-made, like a self-taught developer. I don't have a traditional background. And so a lot of folks that I know that also don't have traditional backgrounds, a lot of folks describe themselves as self-taught, but I feel like we're all teaching each other. Even if I learned from books, like the first lines of Python or whatever I wrote, I learned from one of those books, Headfirst Programming, something like that. But somebody wrote those books. I don't know if it was Kathy Sierra or that, that crew, like somebody wrote that book and spent a lot of time breaking it down in ways that then I could find it and learn from it. Or, a lot of folks learn from watching conference talks. Those take a lot of work. Or a lot of folks learn from blog posts. Those take so much work, or even just open source code that you find on the internet, you're reading, like someone went to the effort of putting that up there, making it available, trying to use legible variable names, etc., so that you could learn from it. So I feel like we need to reframe that as somehow like, I don't know if the phrase might be like community taught or something like that. But I think really acknowledging that we're all in this together and we're all ideally building each other up as we go. Like exactly like you said, Zach, I think that's super important that we really acknowledge that none of us has it all figured out and we're all learning and ideally sharing knowledge with each other all the time.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the next segment, we've got Merge conflict. So what is a merge conflict that you had either through work or your personal life that you've dealt with in the past, and how you overcame it?
Ooh, I mean, are we talking literal merge conflicts, or are we like, I mean, do all of my failed relationships count? I don't.
Oh. I mean, yeah, we've had people talk about, like code merge conflicts, but also, like team. Conflicts. Yeah, exactly. Personal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the merge conflict that I am still trying to figure out is the merging of kind of my my life as an engineer, let's say, or my engagement in tech world, etc., and my my existence as a human in a wider context and in the world that we live in that is so large and complex. And so sort of, again, trying to figure out a healthy way to kind of be a human and a person in tech at the same time is something that I'm still working on, I would say. And I think developer relations is like itself kind of an eternal merge conflict in some ways, now that I think about it, because you're really trying to pull together all of these disparate skill sets and goals and stakeholders and perspectives and pull it into tangible things that will deliver good experiences for the people in the community that are working with them or learning from them, and also make the people at the company that is trying to do DevRel, feel good about it and happy. And so there's just a lot of gluing together, I would say. And so that's the other kind of the other eternal merge conflict that is a work in progress, I would say. But then regular merge conflict, oh yeah, have them all the time. Like every time I branch, basically,
constantly.
So yeah, and I guess I'm a very, I don't know if there's, I don't really try to worry too much about getting those conflicts resolved super quickly. I usually take my time and just go through and sometimes end up rewriting code that I wrote on the original branch, that sort of thing.
Sometimes I just reclone the repo.
Sometimes just blow everything away and start from scratch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I also have a lot of like dead end branches, I feel like, in most of my repos.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if there's like a good term for that, but the unmerged, unloved children.
Those? Yeah, the stumps.
Stumps, yeah, exactly.
All right, and our last segment is Launched Lightly, Crash Darkly, as an homage to our lovely sponsor. What is your best advice for someone starting off in the software development world right now?
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Good luck.
I always give, I think that the number one piece of advice I always give to people who are interested in breaking into the industry or have decided to break in and are like in that initial stage, which is not a fun stage, is community. I think it's really, really important. Like I said, it's really hard, if not impossible, to go it alone. So even if your community is through, let's say, blog posts or bloggers that you like to read, or videos, YouTube channels that you like to watch, what have you, that's a form of community. But I think especially, for me, in-person community is really valuable, or at least some kind of active community that you feel is a place where you're welcome, where you're safe, where you can be a learner, and that can be okay. You can be asking questions, you can be asking for help, you can be sharing your struggles as well as your victories. Like, I think that is the number one most important thing to kind of continuing that journey, because it makes it so much easier to get through those inevitable, really difficult moments when you just feel like you're never going to get it, or this industry doesn't want you, or you don't belong. And having a community of people who are like, yeah, been there, or going through it right now. Let's talk about it. Let's vent. Let's put our heads together. Let's practice. Let's interview prep together. That sort of thing. Super, super valuable. So for me, when I was getting to tech, that was the Recurse Center. So that's a pretty good one if you want to try that one out.
Yeah. There's so many good ones out there. And I think you're so right. Like, you're more likely to stay in any industry or any place if you have a community, just for someone to say, like, how's your day going? Or to just check on you if you have been talking as much as you usually do, or when you're struggling, or things like that. It's so important just to kind of keep your head afloat sometimes when the code is bogging you down, or something else more serious.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like maybe only slightly second to that, the other thing, I think it's really important to like prioritize your community. And I also think it's really important to prioritize and protect, I almost want to say, your curiosity. Because, I think a lot of the time you feel like, oh, and this goes back to the it depends question, right? Of like, what language should I be learning, whatever. A lot of times when you're getting into the software industry, it feels like, oh, like I should be learning this new hotness, or I should be learning like this language because that's where all the jobs are, or I should be doing this type of programming because that's what all the influencers are talking about, but really like that is, and don't be like me. Don't take that bullet train to burnout town. Like that is the way. If you just do what you think you're supposed to do instead of what you're actually excited about or interested in, or just whatever you're like curious, like, why does that work that way? Like, let me pull that thread a little bit. I think protecting that curiosity is really, really important. And so, especially if you have a community that's going to help you do that and help encourage you to do that, instead of, ignoring the things you're curious about and doing what you think is going to be most, externally validated or beneficial. Right. Don't do that. Listen to those of us who've been down that path. Don't do it.
So what are you excited about right now in the software development industry and world right now?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm still recovering from burnout. So I'm still trying to kind of fight my way back to like protecting that little curious spark.
Being excited.
So yeah, being excited. Exactly. But I will say that I am excited to see, I'm excited to see that element of, I guess, empathy sort of play out in what I think the developer experience world is sort of having now. It feels like I wasn't in tech when, I don't know, let's say, user interfaces and user experience kind of as a sub-discipline became kind of more codified. But I think maybe we're in a phase where like developer experience is something that we're starting to understand better and starting to take less as just like, well, I'm a developer and this feels good to me, so that must be a good developer experience for everybody. I think we're starting to understand a little bit more that no, people have different needs and preferences and backgrounds, and there are different contexts, and we need to think about it methodologically, and we need to have kind of be more strategic about how we're approaching the questions of what makes a good experience for developers. And so as, developer tools ecosystems are exploding, and we have so many more folks that have DX or dev experience in their title, I think that that's just going to get better. And I think we're collectively going to get better at understanding that. So I'm excited to see what we learn about that. And I'm hoping, I know there's there's a lot of really great research in academic fields and whatnot, like that could be brought in to more industry best practices, that sort of thing. Yeah. So curious to see what happens there and what we learn about kind of the universal truths of developer experience, if there are any. Who's to say? So
who knows at this rate?
Yeah, that's one thing that I think is interesting, and I think it's going to be an interesting show to watch. So with some popcorn, and be part of, hopefully.
I love that and agree completely. All right, well, it is that time of the show. It is time for Cassidy's sage advice. And I'm Cassidy. Honestly, we've gotten so many amazing tidbits from Anjana throughout the show today, but I think the main one that I really want to drive home to you is you are not your work. And there's so many things in your life and so many things in all of our lives that is not just the code that you're writing or the ticket that you're working on or the meeting that you're in or something. And so when it gets particularly stressful and challenging, try not to let it get you down, because that will get you on that same bullet train to Burnoutville. Nobody wants to be there, because that is a very, very rough place to be in, because when you get there, you become apathetic about your work and you don't enjoy it as much anymore, and you avoid it as much as you can, and you end up getting more stressed, and it's a cycle and stuff. And so remember, you are not your work. try to have that separation and give yourself the space to not feel guilty every single time you're taking a break for video games or TV or what have you. That being said, Zach and Anjana, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah.
Thank you. So nice being here with y'all. Thank you for having me.
Anjana, where can people find you on the internet, and do you have anything you want to plug?
Well, I think I've already plugged my main two things, is Recurse Center and Outreachy. Please go check those things out. But for me, I haven't really been around on Twitter super recently, but I am still on Twitter. Anjana Vakil. I guess that's the main place that I engage with, and I tend to pop up at the occasional conference here and there. But yeah, Anjana Vakil on Twitter, and definitely, if either of those programs sound interesting to you, Recurse Center or Outreachy, go do it now. Worth it.
And once again, because making podcasts is expensive, this show is brought to you by Launch Darkly. Launch Darkly toggles peaks of 20 trillion feature flags each day, and that number continues to grow, and you should use them. You can head over to launchdarkly.com and learn about how. Thank you for making this show possible, Launch Darkly. I've been Cassidy Williams. You can find me at Cassidoo, Cassidoo, on most things, and I'm CTO over at Contenda.
And I'm Zach, and I'm a DevRel at Arrive, and you can find me on Twitter at Zach Plata.
Thank you for tuning into the Dev Morning Show at night. Make sure you head over to our YouTube channel where you can like and subscribe. You can also listen to the audio version of this wherever you get your podcasts.